Hey guys, it's your buddy Choppadong here, and I'm going to make what it would normally be a VIP video, probably release it to the public, because I think you guys need to see some of the tools and things that we're doing and some of the manipulation and some of where, if you've been following my free videos, where some of these skills transfer and what they can produce. Now, I don't know if this is going to produce winning lineups tonight per se or not, but I can tell you over time it works. And using the Domination Station at dfsarmy.com generates very, very highly controllable lineups. I mean, I use it for maybe 10% of the power that it can actually use. Once you learn this tool, it is by far the best baseball optimizer out there, in my opinion. So I'll save you all the mumbo jumbo about joining DFSArmy.com, about using coupon code CHOP for a 10% off discount. Liking and subscribing the video down there in the comment section will be the link. How we're awesome and we coach, and you can ask us questions and learn to use the tools like the leverage stacks tool and the research station to compile game plans. They're very effective for attacking slates and swimming with the sharks. I don't need to mention all of that stuff probably. We'll just save a little bit of time and jump right past it. But, that said, here's your Domination Station. It allows us to back test, which is a very, very important tool in terms of looking back and seeing what worked and what didn't, and how maybe formations work. You do 4x2, 4x3, 4x4, which works on which slates, and blah, 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 blah. I can't do the main slate yesterday. It's not in the system yet, but I can do the early only. We remember it was San Francisco, I guess, that absolutely blew up and you had to have them, but they weren't going to be chalky. And my methodology right now, if you want to go under owned, by all means, you're going to incorporate some of these. But on bigger slates, I won't have any San Francisco yesterday. I will have some because there's a smaller slate and I'm taking exposure to everybody if I'm building, 50 or 100 or 150 lineups. And if you want to talk more about MME and that kind of stuff, then by all means, come inside, look me up, and I tell everybody what I'm doing. It's just that's the only way I know how to be, is honest and transparent. And I change things a lot. I try to tell other people don't change things a lot, but I do. I'm always trying new things, experimenting with new things, thinking of new creative ideas to get different and maybe get ahead of the curve and get a leg up on the field. I've just produced a system that I haven't shared with anybody yet, that if you back test it through the first 3 weeks of April, is up $1,000 in the 50-cent mini-max on DraftKings. Whereas two other methods I'm cross-referencing with it are both in the negative right now. So you're going to go through long swings, down swings. If you chase these tournaments and play these games, you have to be prepared for that. You have to have a bankroll that can live with 3 weeks of seemingly no hope at all. Because that's common. That's going to happen. You're going to go on your stretches of good, but you're going to go on long stretches of bad. If you can't handle that, then this entire DFS game is not for you. You have to be able to handle that without going crazy and changing this and changing that. If you need to change things, this backtesting tool is what helps you do that. You can dive in and you can cross-check things and you can practice for free. That's the whole beauty of it. So how am I going to set this up? We talk about building lineups for ownership, because within the ownership and the chalk and whatever is insulation. You're running with the herd. Yeah, you lose a little bit of leverage, but when the chalk does well, you're right there cashing 60 out of 100 lineups. And when when the chalk does bad, you still got a fighting chance to min cash 15 or 20 of those lineups and get something back. You can generate leverage and you can dive into other areas and really get up to the top on a night like last night when San Francisco just smashed the slate. That's great. But you're probably not doing that with 60, 70% of your lineups. You're probably doing that with, 10% of your lineups. And so you're in there with everybody else, doing what everybody else is kind of doing, and you're just using different formations and things. So the first thing I need to do is determine what a winnable lineup might be. And I do this with cash games first, right? So if I'm going to look at cash games, I'm going to have basically 3 lineups. Let's call it 12 lineups. A couple of unique players. Leave it in optimal mode. Don't touch anything, right? No random, none of this jazz, okay? Don't worry about any of this yet. And don't stack and don't whatever. You're going to uncheck everybody. And you're going to start with your pitchers, and you're going to check back the highest owned pitchers. You can sort by projected ownership and take these 3 dudes back. Yeah, Miley had a bad day. Shit happens. Maybe you'd come down to Dunning, just on this small slate and include a 4th guy, especially if you're playing DraftKings, you need a couple of different pitching options. But and look, 7% for Stevenson, 3%. There isn't going to be, by ownership projection, if you're using these as your points, there isn't going to be a catcher in your lineup, okay? You might check a Tyler Stevenson just in case, but it's not. We're not going to want a lineup that has a 7% guy in it. Rizzo, obviously, Choi. The first basemen are the ones that are going to rule the day here. Yandy Diaz, Luke Voigt, probably because I expect New York to be a little bit chalky. So I might go all the way down to this. I don't expect it to pick up on him. I don't expect him to really bump the overall projection of the lineup in terms of ownership projections up any. I just don't. He's not high enough owned, but I come all the way down. LeMahieu, another cash safe type of guy typically, so I'll come down to him. I'm just, where am I cutting this off? It's not at some hard number, right? I would not have included Evan Longoria yesterday. I would have seen this 30% down to 8% and been like, I don't need the 8%. Skip. Trey Turner, cash game guy. Javi Baez, probably a good alternative. I don't know, Gleyber Torres, maybe if you want. You know, you can include it. I wouldn't have included Brandon Crawford. For cash games, I'm already out on the Giants, right? You're going to include quite a bit of outfielders, and I'm not doing that. I'm doing this because, generally speaking, those guys are not highly enough owned to matter in a cash game. If they go off, so be it. Kiermaier, maybe down to Gardner for 2,200 and 2,000 here. Get a couple of value plays in there. Look who I cut off. Mancini, I missed him, right? By this methodology. Okay, but now that I've got all of these guys checked, the higher owned guys on the slate, top few at each position, kind of where you feel like cutting things off. We're going to make 12 lineups. And then once it jams these out, I'm going to sort them by percent ownership and bring the chalk to the top. 306. I got a 320 earlier, so it's going to vary. You can run this a few different times if you want. You want to maybe include some randomness in it and run it again. See if you can beat the 306. You want to run this a couple of times. See if you can beat the 306, right? Since it's got randomness in it, let's do it again. See, I'm not using the ownership numbers, 307. I'm not using the ownership numbers as my projections. We don't have the ability to do that with this tool yet, but I can use it to determine how chalky my builds are going to be. So if I've got a 308, and I ran this 3 or 4 times, and that's the best I could do. I didn't know that I could do a 320, right? Or I could go to the DFS Army chalkboard, and I can just build my best lineups manually and see how high my score can be. And that might get me to 320, 325, whatever. Now that I'm there, let's call this 308. That's the highest I did. I want to be in about, I don't know, for cash games, a 10% range of that. So I might take this down as low as maybe 280. And what I'm doing is I'm using the minimum slider bar for projected ownership. Instead of putting a cap on it and saying I want everything to be lower owned than 200%, I'm saying I want everything to be higher owned than 280%, right? Take the randomness back off of there, give that a 0, cut this down to maybe 5 lineups, 1 unique. Pretty much check, yeah, I'm going to leave these guys checked the way they are, and I'm just going to run it and see. I could have used any one of these other lineups if I wanted to. There's the 306, 307. Now what I'm looking for is I don't want to see more than 3 people on a team. I don't want to stack, right? Unless it makes sense. I'm going to look at this, say Jock Peterson's a boom or bust guy, so I can probably cut him out. I've got Rizzo, Bodie, Suarez, whatever. These are pretty decent guys. I scroll down to this lineup. It's a 293. It's close. It has 3 Cubs in it. It's got 2. It's got no more than 2. I might like this lineup better. Pick a lineup, any lineup, right? These are all pretty viable by ownership. You're protected by some ownership. Now you have to say, well, Rich Hill, are you kidding me? All right, take him out. Swap another guy in, right? You don't have to worry about using the pitcher that it gives you. You can pick your own pitcher and run again. Go up here and lock somebody else in. Lock in Miley if you want to and run it, okay? And I'm taking the bias of what happened last night out. But this is how you're going to build from these lineups. You don't want 4. If you want 4, run this lineup. If you don't want 4, scroll down a little bit or rerun it again or, uncheck one of these guys. Like if you don't want to see Jock Peterson, uncheck him. If you do, uncheck David Bodie, whatever. You have to make the call, and you have to build your lineups your way with what makes sense to you. I'm giving you the template, right? You have to push the final button. But now if I'm going to do this and turn this into tournament lineups, super easy. I just check everybody back, right? Put the check mark on them all. I may do the pitchers, though, because I like to do this. I like to uncheck some of the worthless guys and leave those reasonable guys in there. Leave it at, say, 100%. But if I want, say, at least 3 pitchers in my lineups today, bing, 40% max on them gives me 40% of one guy, then it moves on to 40% of another guy, then it moves on to 20% of another guy, 3 pitchers, okay? If I want to put minimums on guys, I can. If I want to pull Jermon forward, I can. I can give him a boost, or whatever, and that'll help pull him forward. And I can control all of this stuff in this tool. But most importantly, I can stack. So what I would do for a smaller slate, I would lower this number to like maybe 250, maybe even 220. I just don't want something that's only got 90% total ownership. To me, that doesn't have much of a chance. I mean, it can win, but I want the majority of these lineups to be relatively highly owned. That's where I'm finding the most success. If I put 50 lineups in here, optimal mode, one unique, no settings, I gotta have some randomness. That's how I do things. Baseball's a random game. And then I like to include pitchers, hitters against my pitchers. They can attack a bullpen, they can hit a late bomb, they're low owned, it's taboo in the industry, nobody else will ever do this, so you're unique. And in a big tournament situation, screw you. All the rules go out the window when we're trying to win big tournaments. Okay? So don't let anyone tell you differently. They're blowing smoke up your ass. It's not. They're just bullshitting you. It doesn't matter. Hitter stack rules. I'm going to choose some of these stacking formations. Okay? I'm going to say let's do 20% 3x3. Actually, it's a smaller slate. Let's do 40% 3x3. No, sorry. 25% 3x3, 50% 4x, 25% 4x3. Why? That adds up to 100%. I'm randomly selecting those teams, which means it's going to mix and match these two at each other all willy-nilly, okay? But here's what I'm going to do. Why didn't I include a 4x2? I don't know, because the 4x is going to give me 4x2s, right? So I don't care. It's going to give me, so I've got that base covered. Might not get some 4x4, so 4x3 may create a 4x4. If it does, great, So I'll get some of those too. I like running between 5 and 25% of everybody, but here's what I do on smaller slates. Smaller slates like this, I like to just take the chalk, and I don't see a chalk rating here, but let's say Tampa Bay was chalk. I'll put 20% on them. Let's say New York was the other chalk. I'll put 20% on them. Okay? Now, I'm going to go through and say the next most chalk, 12% on you, 12% on you, probably 12% on you. That leaves 8% left for these other guys. Can you tell I do my research, I do my practice, right? Add those up, it's 100%, okay? So it's just that simple. If I want to put a minimum on everybody, put 5% on because I'm at least 5. So I get at least 5% of everybody. I'm going to get 12% of some, 20% of others. It's going to force itself out of these other teams into other stuff. So then maybe 30, I'll get 4 of these teams mixed in. If I want only 3 teams, I'll do this, okay? Now it's going to cap that stuff and it's going to move on. It's going to force other teams into the mix. I'm going to randomly mix these together, and I've got my stacks set. I've got all of my guys set. If I wanted to go through and adore all of the hitters, I certainly could, but for speed today, we're just going to do this and see if it'll produce me the number of lineups that I need. As it rocks and rolls through the pile here. And then I can sort this out. I don't know what the money line was. I know we had some big numbers. Dudes were over like 300. In a lot of cases, but I can sort this by percent ownership, and I can see I got 259s, and at the bottom here, so that's not going to be the 310, it's not going to be purely chalk, it's going to be off chalk, and down here I got 220s. So if I'm using, these here, I got 220, there's a giant stack, right? They're going to be down here towards the bottom, so they're going to be lower owned. See if I can find there's a giant stack, a 4-man stack, okay? The lineup hit 217. So if I come down here and sort this again by final fantasy points, the best lineup I produced was a 227. That didn't win, right? It probably cashed, but it didn't win a big tournament. But I can go down here and I can see how these things, if I know what the cash line was, let's just hypothetically pretend that the cash line was 100. I can scroll up here. That one cashed. So 28 and above. I cashed 28 out of 50 lineups. That's going to do okay for the day, even in a GPP. And I produced what ended up being a 227 that maybe get me 3x or 4x or something like that. Maybe it did a little better, but if I know 300 something won, I know this didn't win, right? But I can go back and I can backtest. I can build for the 300. I can keep playing with things and figuring out my stacks, my players, who I've got. If I want to put caps on players, at 65%, I can do that and spread around. And I can start testing the methodology. Do I need to go all in? Do I need to spread out? Do I need to stack harder? Do I need to stack less? Do I need to include more pitchers? That's the stuff we talk about inside DFSArmy.com. This is just one way to show you how the tools work and why our leaderboards are full of our Army helmets. We know what we're doing. We know how to coach. We know how to manipulate the tools and tell your story. If you want to learn how to do that, you need to come inside DFSArmy.com, all the stuff. Check the description. It's down in there. Leave me a comment. I'll probably comment back to you. But for today, this is a good review for a Friday that'll get you started better for next week. Talk to me later. Talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Peace out, everybody.